Welcome to the Whose Body Is It podcast. I'm your host, Isabella Malvin. For those who don't know me, I'm a birth worker, a life coach, hypnotist, and a former liberal feminist turned radical truth teller. On this podcast, I expose the forces at play attempting to control our minds and bodies, such as transgender ideology, pornography, prostitution, and so much more. Together, we'll untangle patriarchal lies as you listen to jaw-dropping interviews with women from around the world. Warning, while listening to this podcast, you might find yourself triggered or perhaps notice where you've been biting your tongue on the issues that matter most to you. In my coaching and hypnosis, I help women and men stop getting triggered by every single thing, cultivate resilience, stop unwanted behaviors, and increase self-confidence. You can book your first session at 𝑰𝒏𝒐𝒄𝒖𝒍𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈, and you can find that link in the episode show notes. And I just want to say that it's because of your endless support that I'm able to interview amazing women, get their stories out, and produce regular episodes for you. So with that being said, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel on YouTube. And if you're listening in, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also consider making a financial contribution via the link in my show notes. You can also visit my activist sticker shop. My pro-woman stickers have the power to intercept transhumanist programming. So take a photo of your stickers out in the wild and tag me on Instagram at Whose Body Is It. Oh gosh, well, it's 2022, and sadly, everyone's child will encounter transgender ideology. It's no longer a matter of if, but when. Perhaps you've seen what's going on in schools and in the media and want to be able to talk to the children in your life about it preventatively, but don't know where to start. Maybe you don't even have children, but you've noticed that all kids seem to be learning in school these days is what the letters LGBTQI+++ stand for. Maybe you want to do something about it because you simply care about the future of humanity. Now, we know the stakes are high. We're not just talking about this ending with new pronouns and a new name. We're talking the permanent dismembering of a child's intact and perfect body. We're talking about organ damage and a lifetime of negative side effects from the wrong sex hormones, and that's just the beginning. 𝒕 Singleton and I will be hosting a masterclass for parents and concerned citizens on how to effectively protect your child from this anti-human, anti-woman, pharma-funded ideology. This masterclass is for you if you care deeply about safeguarding the minds and bodies of our children against a predatory ideology and medical industry. If you're sick of hearing the party lines that a child can be born in the wrong body or assigned the wrong sex at birth. If you've been told that social transition isn't a big deal, 𝒕 and I are here to remind you that you are not crazy. We can resist this by taking a firm stance against the pharmaceutical drug industry that is preying upon our children. So if you're a parent and you're sick of being told that you're not the authority on your child and that you're even transphobic for questioning your child's desires and demands, you have come to the right place. In our upcoming masterclass, you'll gain clarity on the harms of, quote, gender medicine, have your concerns validated, and gain the confidence to protect our children with compassion, discernment, and consciousness. The masterclass will be hosted on Zoom on November 10th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, if you're in Europe or Australia or in Africa or Asia and the time doesn't make sense for you, you will get access to the replay. So whether or not you can join us live, the following day, you will get a link that gives you access to the masterclass through November 2024. You can secure the early bird price of $99 now through November 11th. All that information is linked in the episode show notes. Without further ado, let's get into this week's story. Growing up in San Francisco, Ray was not a stranger to Pride Parade or transgenderism, although she wasn't directly involved in either. Trans ideology came into Ray's life around 2019 when she was in a relationship with a man who was online almost all the time. Being online was something that they did to connect and spend time together, so it wasn't long until Ray was deep in various forums and exploring new labels for her gender and sexual identity. Ensconced in these echo chambers, she began to identify as trans. After coming out to her therapist and primary care provider, she was passed off to specialists in, quote, trans healthcare, who encouraged her to go on testosterone and get a double mastectomy. Ray soon recognized that the short-lived high of being on testosterone could not outweigh the long-term negative side effects, which for Ray included developing a blood clot. When her painful bruising appeared, it was not a doctor or any kind of medical expert, but her female friend who reminded her to tune into her body's needs. In this episode, we explore what motivated Ray to disidentify with her femaleness, what kept her going back to her doctors, and how she started listening to her body again. Towards the end of the episode, we have a lively conversation about if and how to stay in connection with trans-identified friends and how to establish boundaries. Do you ever get sick of the word trans?
I mean, now that I'm not really so much in the community anymore, I don't hear it a lot, thankfully. But yeah, I just kind of like, I feel like it's being aggressively put in people's faces these days. And so sometimes it's just like, we get it. I understand. Like, can we move on now? But yeah, I definitely do get tired of hearing about it all the time and people just like aggressively defending it without any analysis behind it or real information.
So let's start from the beginning. Let's maybe, would you mind saying a little bit about your kind of first experience of hearing like about trans ideology, transgenderism, meeting, someone who identified as trans? Like, what was your entry point into this world?
I mean, growing up, I lived like 45 minutes east of San Francisco. So I would go to the city, as a kid with my family to go, just do stuff, have fun. And so I was exposed to it, but not in the sense of like going to drag shows as a child or anything like that. It was just like, this is San Francisco. This is the Castro area, the rainbows, things like that. My grandmother had drag queens as friends growing up that she would like go out and party with when she was younger. And then as they got older, they just like became friends. So I was around it. I was aware of it. I knew about, men dressing up as women and things like that. I just didn't really see any shows or really go to Pride or anything until I was like in my late teens, early 20s. But the trans ideology got me really bad in about 2019, right before the pandemic. I was in a relationship where the other person was online a lot. And so it kind of made me go online a lot because that was kind of how we spent time together. I was kind of at a low point with myself, like mentally. And So I used online to just explore things because I was like, well, I'm feeling, I hate my body. I hate the way that people, interact with me. And I was already questioning things around that time as well. I still didn't really know trans people at that point, but I mean, it's kind of everywhere. So it was something I knew of. And so I started exploring that stuff online, like looking into different labels and names and, all those things out there. I don't know, the more I got into it, the more echo chambers that I was just surrounding myself with online. I got like deeper and deeper into all of these labels. And the people in my real life were also just like blindly affirming everything that I thought that I was. I'm like, oh, I'm just a gender nonconforming woman. And they're like, okay. And then I was like, no, I'm non-binary and I only go by they, them. And people were like, okay, great. I don't know. It was just like a blind, like, yeah, you're all of these things, and we're going to affirm it in real life and online. And then like 2020 hit, and we were all locked inside. I was still stuck with this person who was chronically online. I stopped seeing people face to face. Yeah.
When you say online, what do you mean on, like, what was it a man? Was it a woman? What were they doing online?
I was with a man, and he was on like similar sites like Reddit, and then he did a lot of online gaming as well. And so it was between online gaming communities and communities like Reddit that he was just constantly consumed by. Like even when we were out, he was on his phone on Reddit, or it was just constant. And then the pandemic just made it worse. It just made it so much worse. And so I got so consumed by these online things, these online identities. And it just translated into real life after a while. It happened really fast too. Between like 2019, I still identified as a woman like earlier that year. And then by 2020, I was fully like cut my hair, non-binary, started going on testosterone that same year in 2020. And yeah, it just happened really, really fast. And
Wow.
it was crazy.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say it happened really fast. And I also am wondering, like, okay, what was your relationship to like medical authority or like even medication in general around this time right before you got on testosterone? Like, what would you say your relationship was to like medicine and white coat authority and all that?
Yeah. So the medical part of it is actually where I have the most like rub with trans ideology, gender ideology, all of it. That's the main part that I actually like focus on when I'm talking about it and when I'm criticizing it as well. I was pretty in the medical industry before then. I, struggled with mental health most of my life. I had been on and off different, like depression and anxiety meds. I haven't been on them for years, and I wasn't on them at the time either in 2019, 2020. But I saw a doctor on a regular basis. I had like, therapist. I would probably go to the doctor maybe 2 to 3 times a year tops. I also struggled with endometriosis really badly as well. So in 2019 is when I started really getting treatment for that as well. So I was pretty regularly at the doctor, but it was mostly normal stuff and mostly just, endometriosis management. So the medical journey of my transition is really shocking to me. So what happened is I came out to my therapist, and she asked me some like wildly inappropriate questions. At the time, I thought they were. But I mean, looking back, she was just concerned for my health, really. But she basically was like, I can't help you. Here's a different therapist. And so I got in with a new therapist. And so that was a change. And then I came out to my primary care physician, and she was like, oh, well, I can't help you. Here's a new doctor at a new facility. It's called Open Door. Here, they're like community-based health centers, kind of like Planned Parenthood, but actual medical offices. They have more actual doctors, not just nurse practitioners and things like that. And so that's when I got in touch with he's a nurse practitioner. He's like specifically for trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming patients. And there's only 2 of them here. And so he's one of the 2. Yeah, he was the one, like the first appointment, he was like, here's the paperwork, sign your name on the dotted line. It's called informed consent. Informed consent is not so informed. It's basically just paperwork that's like, this is what will or could happen to your body if you start taking testosterone. Do you agree? Sign your name on the line. And it's just pages and pages of this. And I signed that. And he was willing to prescribe and like have a nurse come in and give me a shot of testosterone basically that day, before I had any lab work done, before I had any like real consultation or anything. It was a 15-minute appointment. And I told him no. I was like, that's not what I'm here for. I just came out to my other doctor and they sent me here. I don't know, dude. But after that, I was in the doctor's office every 3 months after that, for blood work, for seeing him, checking in to see if I wanted to start testosterone. Almost every appointment he would ask me about top surgery. Even though I told him I didn't want it, I was like, no, I'm here for this. And it was mostly my endometriosis management. Like, that's really what I was there for. But he ended up pawning me off on a gynecologist for that, and was just like, basically, he's only there for trans related health and really nothing else. From 2020 to up until earlier this year, I was seeing him every 3 months and getting blood work done every 3 months. And on testosterone, I went from topical to injections, and it kind of ruined my health for a while. Like, it physiologically ruined my health for a while, and he didn't seem to care. And it was really tough being shoved off onto all these other doctors and therapists, just because I had like come out and was questioning things. But there was no pushback in the medical industry. It was just like, whatever you want to do, however you identify, that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm. So were you already on hormone replacement therapy for the endo? You think you were referred to him because he is the doctor who will like dispense many drugs simultaneously, or like who feels comfortable doing so? Like, what? I'm just curious about maybe the drugs that you were prescribed previously, and then what happened to your body physiologically when you took the testosterone.
Yeah. So when I was treating my endometriosis, I was on this, it was a once a month injectable medication. I cannot remember the name of it, Zoladex. But it was like a little actually, it was huge. It was a big, scary needle that injected like this little implant that stopped the communication between your pituitary gland and your reproductive system. And it like suppressed estrogen. And I did that for about 6 months, and it was life-changing in the sense that I didn't have endometriosis pain. Because for me, my endometriosis pain was probably 3 to 4 weeks out of the month, every month. So I got no relief from it ever until I went on that medication. But you can't be on those things long term, especially the ones like Zoladex, where it completely shuts everything down, without being on an additional hormone replacement thing. And at the time, I didn't want to do progesterone or estrogen or anything like that, because I had horrible experiences with hormonal birth control before then. And so I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I had been like on the fence about testosterone. And so I just decided to start testosterone at that time. I mean, even as my doctor put it, try it out. Like, they literally are just trying it out. And he even, like, I have him on record saying that language of just like, we don't know, let's just try it out. It's trial and error. Yeah. Which at the time didn't terrify me, but now I'm just like shocked.
It is a sales pitch. That's what it felt like when I walked out of after that appointment. When I walked out, I was just like, I really felt like I was being sold something, and I fell for it, and I bought it, and I did it. And it's really frustrating to know that these are the things that he's saying to also very vulnerable young people. Because I know that clinic does see much younger people. They have their own pediatrics in that clinic as well. So I can't even imagine the things that are said to parents, to younger children, to other vulnerable women who are experiencing things like I do. Like, this all started because endometriosis was wreaking havoc on me mentally and physically. What other place do you get to walk into and basically design your own treatment? I didn't get to do that with my endometriosis. If it was up to me, the second I was diagnosed with it, they would have just ripped the whole damn thing out and called it good at that time. That's the thing, is being able to walk into these places saying, I feel this way. Everyone just affirms it. They make you sign your name on the dotted line. They give you the sales pitch, and then they don't know, and they don't know the consequences. They don't know, what's going to happen, the metrics that they use. I mean, he literally said that they don't know. Like, and that it's up to me, the patient, the person that they are, quote unquote, trying to treat. When you step back and you look at it objectively, and you listen to these things from an outside perspective, drop the gender ideology stuff. It's a sales pitch. It's designer medicine for money. It's all for money. I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to participate in it anymore. I didn't want doctors telling me they don't know how to help me. But here's an injection, and here's some stuff, and here's a pill, and here's this, and here's that, and maybe it'll get you where you want it to go. But it's a journey, and it's your own journey. People don't walk into the ER and they say, what do you need? Why do I get to walk into a doctor's office and they just say, oh, well, what do you need? What do you want? That's not medicine. That's not treatment. That's whatever we're living through right now.
So I was on the Zoladex and the testosterone for a while, and that was fine. I mean, testosterone is great in the sense that it gives you a rush. It makes you feel great. It just makes you feel really good, whether you're injecting it, whether there's like this gel you can rub on. It makes you feel great initially, like euphoric. So yeah, I had none of this endometriosis pain. I was on testosterone and feeling great. And at first it was like, yeah, this is wonderful. I'm going to keep doing this. And then I switched to a daily pill form of Zoladex that's less harsh. And I was on the testosterone still. Unfortunately, that pill form of that medication caused a lot of issues with my pharmacy. And so I would miss certain weeks of it. And when you did that, my body was like, you're going to start your cycle all over again, even though I was on testosterone. And so it was horrible to experience because the testosterone made the endometriosis worse. And so not to get too graphic, but I would literally bleed for weeks. It would stop. It would bleed for another week or so, and then it would stop. And it was just terrible. And my face was broken out. My hair started thinning. My voice dropped super fast. But I never, other than the rush of testosterone, especially once I switched to the injections, the rush of that was the only thing that was keeping me going. Because my body physically, I could tell I was constantly tired. I felt run down. I just felt ragged and stressed all the time. But I was just like, oh, it's just because I still look like a woman. I don't know. It was just this weird mismatch between understanding physiological science and hormones and crazy affirmation and ideologies. Like there was just this huge clash between it.
And starting that journey with something as serious as endo and not finding a resolution there, like you said, like the medication you were on like transformed your life because you didn't have pain, but it was a short-term solution. So like it's such a kind of a literal push and pull of like you're experiencing a condition that is uniquely for females, uniquely for women. And doesn't seem to be a way out.
No.
Right. At that point, doesn't seem to be, it just feels like a life sentence. And then there's the opportunity, the illusion to totally opt out. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's really common with women who are formerly trans identified, right? Which is the unresolved reproductive issues, or like never getting to the root cause of the symptoms creates like a vulnerability to opt out, versus a woman who has like a really regular cycle and is like maybe giving her blood to the earth every month, and who, has a red tent in Nebraska, or, whatever.
Yeah.
So you had this like, even that have this like a extra layer of vulnerability, not only to trans ideology, but, having been in a place of trust also with the medical paradigm. Like it's so disturbing what you just said about what you relayed about the doctor, like you would just try it out. But that's what they say about everything. It's like, it doesn't matter that this is attached to an ideology. So are all the other things. They're all attached to different belief systems and ideologies around health and well-being and what risk is, the informed consent lie, all of it. So you're now on like 2 different really intense medications. Your body is like, it's like the bleeding is like, your body's like, no, we're really female. And then it's like, no, we like testosterone. No, we're really like, I just am imagining this, like, what did it feel like day to day to have that like tension?
I was not even embodied enough to pay attention to the inner conflict. Like I could tell emotionally it was affecting me. Testosterone really does make it harder to be in touch with your emotions. I don't like it. It gave me a deep sympathy for men in that sense, because I went from being able to cry to I didn't cry for like a year and a half. Like I physically could not do it.
Wow.
I felt this like weird mental detachment between my emotions and like logic. I felt like there was just like this big gap. And so I was either like completely logical and quite frankly, totally an asshole, or it was just like super intense emotions. And there was no like thinking and feeling. It was just one or the other, very black and white. It was very strange. But the main thing that woke me up to the fact that my body was not happy with this arrangement, I believe I threw a blood clot, like a small one, in my leg, because I woke up one morning with this giant, like it was probably 3 inches around total, and it was like raised, and it was just this giant bruise on the back of my thigh that I woke up with. I didn't hurt myself. I didn't fall. I didn't trip. I didn't kick anything. And it was painful and throbbing. And I remember someone in my family had a small blood clot thrown in their leg as well. And I remember them describing it almost exactly like what I had. And it freaked me out. And I didn't go to the doctor about it either. I was just like, oh, it's a bruise. Even if it is a small clot, it's fine, because it ruptured there in my leg and not anywhere else in my body, thankfully. And then my skin was also just more and more intensely like hormonal acne to the max. And it never got better, even after I was on testosterone for like 2 years total. And it never got better. My mental health did not get better. I did not feel better about myself. I still had endometriosis. Like it was all of that. And then like I also changed a lot of my friend groups at that time as well. And one of them, she's like my best friend now. she was like, did you know that blood clots are like one of the number one risks of being on testosterone long term? And like people have died from blood clots being thrown in their lungs or in their brain from, testosterone cross-sex hormone therapy. And I was like, no. And then she sent me all this research and I was like, oh my God. And she was the only one who questioned me about any of this. She was the only one who was like, listen to your body. Like, what is it telling you? And then we got heavily into feminism at that time. And honestly, Andrea Dworkin saved my life.
Wow.
Listening to her speak and like doing all of this research about how medically hormone replacement therapy is just so unknown and awful. And then listening to this like powerful woman, dismantle patriarchy and misogyny and really like embody womanhood for me again. Between those two things, I was just like, oh my God, I can't keep doing this to myself. And yeah, once I finally had that embodiment connection, I realized that my biological body was telling me the whole time, don't do this. This is not the right thing to do. This is not what you want. This is not making you happy. I didn't quit testosterone cold turkey after that. I tapered off of it, but almost immediately I felt relief. I felt that inner tension and stress like start melting away with each week that I was like slowly decreasing the testosterone. And I've been off of it now since June of this year.
Okay, so it's still pretty recent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so okay, so I have so many questions. Okay, so first of all, what did your boyfriend say when you're like, I'm a man stuck in a woman's body? I mean,
I never really fully identified as a man. I'll give you the label that I used to spiel out. I identified as non-binary, transmasculine, polyamorous, gay man.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
so many things.
Telling you those online things will get you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is literally just basically I'm a straight woman. Like that's literally what it was. He's now my ex, so he struggled with it a lot, and we butted heads a lot about it because he did try to question me and I didn't want to be questioned. He really struggled with accepting the testosterone and the physical changes. He had a lot of pushback, and essentially that is what I ended up breaking up with him for, was just the fact that he wasn't being supportive. There were a multitude of other reasons as well, like being chronically online and addicted to porn. But yeah, I just couldn't handle the pushback from him. And so I asked him to leave.
It sounds like it was not a match regardless, or there was a fringe benefit to this whole experience of the medicalization aspect and the identity part. So that's interesting. Okay, so you never really like believed the narrative that you were like trapped in the wrong body or that you were always trans. Like, did you like rewrite your childhood and you're like, oh, this is why I've been suffering all of this time, because I didn't have access to testosterone to like help me feel like my most authentic self? Like, is that how you thought about it?
Thankfully, no. My parents were very like anti-technology. So I'm like one of the last few young 30-year-olds who wasn't like online as a child. So no, thankfully. And I tried, like when I first was playing with all this, I tried to look back and be like, well, were there signs? Yeah, maybe. I like to play with the boys. I definitely like to get dirty and sweaty. And I was a tomboy. I really was. Yeah, I got into the girly stuff in like middle school, and it was only because I was like forced to by my mom, and the whole womanhood indoctrination that you have to go through if you're raised in America.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I had moments where I was like, well, yeah, maybe there were signs that I was more masculine or whatever. I only always like boys or men. So, that must have mean something. But no, thankfully I was not grasped by ideology from a really young age. It only happened when I was older.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It sounds like it was like the perfect storm in some ways of, the internet with isolation and like fear. So many people just went deeply, deeply inward, for better or for worse, in the past 2.5 years. Like, and I think it accelerated a lot of, kind of seeds maybe that we had. I like to think about it that way. But it sounds like this friend of yours was really instrumental. I mean, do you credit her as like peaking you, or kind of like taking you out of that like way of thinking, or that belief system that you had?
Absolutely. She was crucial to that. Like, yeah, she pilled me, peaked me, whatever you want to call it. Like, totally. And I mean, I was already kind of there. It was already like unraveling, but she saw the loose string and was just like, well, I'm gonna pull on that and see what happens. And the whole damn thing unraveled. Like, I definitely did the interpersonal work, but she was like the outside objective, like, hey, remember that you're a scientist and that you believe in science and you have a freaking degree like in zoology. I literally studied the physiology of animals, including humans, and I was willing to ignore that for gender ideology. And being like,
Wow.
yeah, there can be trans kids. Yeah, people can be born in the wrong body. No, 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 I'm a scientist. That is wrong. Like, you're not going to look at a tree and tell the tree, oh, you should be a Douglas fir instead of a redwood. Like,
What did you think you were going to get when you went on testosterone? Like, what did you believe that it was going to do for you?
I thought it would make me who I was or who I am. I thought it was some kind of step in my self-actualization, because I struggled with that for a long time. I had very low self-esteem. I had no sense of direction in my life. I didn't have a solid sense of self until very recently. So it was really easy to get caught up in that, especially, when you have the online affirmation and then you have the affirmation in real life, and nobody's challenging it, nobody's questioning it, and it's just also part of the bigger cultural and societal narrative. Like, well, it's easy to get lost, to forget in science that I have a degree in. Like, that part blew my mind when I was just like, I have been totally ignoring like actual biology and physiology to find myself. And it didn't work. It just flat out did not work for me. I didn't find myself. I didn't feel better. I felt more lost, more low, more scared than anything. And then now I have these permanent changes that I have to live with. I can't undo the facial hair that came in. I can't undo a lot of the body hair as well. I can't undo my voice. It is what it is.
I mean, what would you say to someone who says, well, okay, right, it didn't work for you, but it works for other people? What do you say to people when they, people who believe in the true trans, and that you were never really trans?
I did have trans friends that I had to talk about this stuff with. I do have trans friends that I am still close with even after this. And my standpoint with all of those conversations or with people like that is to come at it from a like health and biology standpoint, because you can't argue with them. Like you cannot argue physiology and biology. And I'm not some bioessentialist who thinks that like women need to do these things and men need to do them, blah blah blah. Like, but like physiologically, biologically, these things exist. And you can't just play around with them and expect to have no consequences. And so I guess my main thing when people are really looking into this, or even if you're thinking about doing this for your child, think about their health. Think about your health. What is this doing for your health physically? Mentally, go see a therapist. Go talk to someone else. I don't have time for that. Physically, think about your health.
Mm-hmm.
What is this going to do for you physiologically? Is this the right thing to do physiologically? Like, and that's also hard to say to people who don't do their own research, who won't read the articles, who won't look at the things. They just want the blind affirmation. They want the euphoria, and to not put in any of the work to actually look at this stuff objectively.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And deal with like the root cause of the pain, because the
Yeah.
more pills you take, the easier it is to divert attention. Like all of a sudden you're like a medical patient who has prescriptions and appointments and it's a project. I mean, it's like a whole life project, a time consuming, lifelong endeavor, which functions as a like a massive distraction from like what is under the surface.
Absolutely. Like I cannot agree with that more. It felt like a distraction for me. It was another way to run away from the fact that we live in a terribly woman-hating society. Like, yeah, of course, if I can opt out of being a woman in America, I'm gonna fucking do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it sucks being a woman here. I have been harassed, I have been raped, I have been abused, all of these things solely because I'm a woman. And transitioning is not going to change that.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to change that at all. And it's not going to change it. Like, it didn't change it for me. It's not going to change it for any other woman out there. You're still going to be hated simply because you were born a woman.
So what was it like? What were the conversations like with it? Well, it sounds like you answered the question. It sounds like your angle and the way that you've talked about it is, I had serious health repercussions. This wasn't good for my physiology, and this is why I stopped. But that doesn't explain why you no longer buy into the ideology, because you could still buy into the ideology and opt out of the medicalization. So how do you talk to people or your friends who identify as trans? How do you talk to them now about a departure from the ideology? Or do you? Are you not there yet? Which is fine too.
Yeah, the one trans friend that I have, they built their identity not from the ideology. This was something that they did their own research, they reached their own conclusions. They don't buy into a lot of the gender ideology surrounding it. So, and they're rare. Like, people like that are exceedingly rare. And so I did kind of have that conversation with them, and we agree about gender ideology, and like especially on like transing children and things like that. So
Is this a woman or a man you're talking about?
this person was born a woman and they identify now as non-binary.
Okay. So this person believes that, well, okay. So it sounds like she believes in true trans.
Yeah, but it's more like a self-definition of transness that wasn't born out of the gender ideology cult or any online things.
So then what would be the distinction between that and gender nonconforming in her mind?
they're kind of the same. Like they hold hands. It's just different language for basically
Mm-hmm.
the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Gender nonconformity, non-binary.
Or maybe the distinction is that she is medicalized. So it's not just gender. So maybe that's the distinction between gender nonconformity and trans ideology, is the inclusion of medicalization. Or like, do you believe in true trans?
I don't know. I really don't know. I want to say from like a physiological standpoint as a scientist, no. But knowing what I know about human psychology, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know that we know everything about the inner workings of human brains, because we don't. And I mean, deep down, like this person is still a human in my life that I love dearly, and I'm not going to disrespect them because I don't agree with, you know, everything that they choose to do with their adult body. Like,
yeah, there's a distinction there. Well, I'm really glad we're having this conversation, because this is, I think, what you're describing in the relationship, like having your beliefs and then being in like close friendship with this woman. Like this is a position that a lot of people, I think, listening to the podcast are in, and are unsure of how to proceed, and what is respectful, and what is compassionate, and what is theirs, and, you know, what is someone else's. And I think, you know, so you just described this is an adult making decisions and using the medical industry, you know, to get cosmetic surgery, maybe to take wrong sex hormones. But the distinction for me is, okay, that's not where the problem is, right? The problem is the expected participation in that belief system. So if you take, like, you know, you're Orthodox Christian, and you go to your Orthodox Jewish friend's house, and then all of a sudden, like, you're not allowed to use the word Jesus, you know, or you're expected to, if you're a man, to wear a yarmulke, or you know, so like that's the line. Like the demand or the expectation of participation in the belief system is what crosses the line, which is, you know, where all the bathroom stuff comes in, and sports and pronouns. So I think most people who are gender critical can understand that it's going to be hard to legislate adults to not use the medical industry at their disposal. Now, there's some room around, you know, like what's covered by taxpayers and whatnot. But where I get tripped up on this is the conflation of respect and like personal, like, dignity and belief. Like, if holding my belief system is a sign of disrespect, then that's an incompatibility, right? And if the conditions of the friendship are to concede to someone else's belief system, well, that's also, I find, problematic, right? So I'm not here to tell anyone what to do and how to speak to their friends. And, you know, if you're going to have a persona with, you know, this friend who I think is in a cult, and you want to maintain connection, then that's your prerogative as a human, right? But we have to be able to, I think, make the distinction between respect and what is just out of integrity, or a complete, like, centering of someone else's beliefs. Because this doesn't even happen in a religious context. Like, we don't even expect people to do this of completely differing, like, faiths. But when it comes to this faith, this cult, we are expected to, you know, in order to maintain relationships. And I'm not saying this friend is going to abandon you if you know, use right sex pronouns, but for many, this is true, right? There's a kind of a list of, like, a compliance protocol, because to be non-compliant means to confront what this person knows to be absolutely true. Otherwise, there would be no transness, like, involved in any of it to begin with. So, yeah, I think what you've just described is a really relatable, not just women who were formerly trans identified, but women who are coming out of like the woke left, who, whose entire communities and were built around these principles about this belief system, and what does it mean to remain in connection, and what are the terms of remaining in connection, and I think it's a constant negotiation, right?
Yeah. I mean, a perfect example of this was when I first started, I call it unraveling. When I started unraveling, I did have a younger trans identified female friend, and I use people's preferred pronouns just out of respect for their humanity and to not, it's one of the last things that I'm willing to like be respectful of. But he would send me very problematic like memes and messages and things about surgery and things like that. And I finally put up a boundary around that. I was like, I do not want to talk about these things. I don't find them funny. Stop sending me this stuff. And he lost his marbles, like completely railed into me and was just like, I know you're going through stuff, but I should be able to share these things, and just wanted me to be completely boundaryless around this, and just like wanted to be able to openly and freely talk about his transness with me without any boundaries. And I was just like, no, we're not doing that. And I lost that friendship. And that's typically what happens. But with this other friend that I have who still identifies as trans, who kind of developed it out of their own actual informed research, and I can't explain how they really formed their idea of transness, but like, we have boundaries around what we talk about. We have boundaries around these things, and they don't have to talk about transness or being trans or any form of gender ideology when we're together. Like, it's not something that has to constantly be brought up or be put in my face, or it's like family, sometimes when they get together, there's just certain things you don't talk about. And that's one of those things between me and this friend. And we have a connection on many other areas. Our friendship was not based around gender ideology. So we had a connection built around being human rather than this ideology and what we're doing medically or what we're doing with our bodies or all of that stuff. It's much more human and like raw than the superficial gender ideology cult stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear where you're at. I totally hear it. I mean, it honestly just reminds me of like being friends with someone who's in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
I don't know what else you could compare it to, because it's distinct from religion. It's distinct. You can, most people can talk openly about what they believe, who they believe the Messiah is versus who you believe the Messiah is, or like, that there's a Messiah at all, and but I hear what you're saying, in that you have all these other points of connections. And so you found a way to relate to one another and maintain a friendship with boundaries. But I would say that, yeah, I would wonder, I'm curious, like, if you were like, this is like too much, like, I've just come out of my own stuff, like I'm working on, naming my reality and describing my reality. It's actually like not okay for my mental health to keep pretending that you're the opposite sex, or that you're like a non-sexed person or whatever. And so I'm going to from now on call you a woman. Like, what do you think? How do you think that would go over? Like, that's my point of curiosity. Like, if all of a sudden you decide to not agree to the terms, and I guess she could say, she could say the same. She could say, if you don't talk about these topics in this way, then, I'm not here for it. But do you think that there are many people who are identifying as trans that would maintain a relationship with someone who rightly sexes them?
Um, probably not. It would probably be the end of that relationship and that friendship. And this is where I'm, and this is just personal, like this is where I'm willing to be a little uncomfortable or have to hold back a little bit in order to maintain this connection that I have.
Yeah.
And we have other common ground when it comes to these things too. And so, I mean, yeah, if I did want to go like hardcore, you know, you were born a woman, so I'm going to call you she, and I'm not going to buy into this. Like, I feel like that at this point, we've known each other for years now. I feel like at that point, it would just be like a sign of just utter disrespect for our friendship and for this other human. And so I can objectively maintain this distance of like, yes, I do not buy into this stuff, but I'm not going to do it to the point where I'm going to disrespect you as a human because we have so much other common things, especially in regards to gender ideology. But anybody else, I lost all my other friends who I challenged or any of that. I was like, I'll still respect your pronouns. I'll still respect your name. But just know that I still am a scientist. I still believe in physiology and biology. And I'm still going to like push back a little bit if I find something that's like possibly detrimental to your health. And yeah, a lot of them couldn't hang with that. And yeah, if I was not willing to at least respect the pronoun thing and let this other adult human experience their life the way that they want to, yeah, I definitely would lose them for sure.
I mean, it's definitely sounds like it's been a whirlwind. I mean, just how quickly, as you said, everything happened, like going in and then coming out, and then now navigating, you know, community or on the other side. I really appreciate you like engaging with me on this particular aspect. And it's okay if we're, you know, it's okay to be in disagreement about this. Like you know, it's okay. Like this is what this space is for to be, and especially this topic because this is a really relevant. Yeah, it's just relevant to a lot of women who are wondering like, what are the costs, right? What are the personal costs to quote respecting the pronouns, and then what are the costs to, you know, remaining in like total integrity around this, you know, around this ideology or, you know, gender criticism or radical feminism. So what is the cost there? And there are costs on both sides. I mean, you've just named there is the cost of losing or reworking or, you know, rearranging your community and your friend group. And that's something that, you know, I don't think any of us plan, you know, like I didn't like plan to lose all my friends. You know, I didn't, but I also know that there was no other way. There was no other way to be in my mission and in my purpose and in my power with maintaining that same group. And I think maybe similarly to you, like you could never have been on the path of actual self-actualization had you stayed in the illusion of medicalization, trans ideology, and all that.
Absolutely. It's because it was killing me slowly, but it was killing me to be medicalized like that. And I'll tell you what, oh man, not having to stab myself or go to a pharmacy or get my blood drawn or talk to my doctor for the last like since June has been great. Oh my God. Oh, I have so much more time. I have so much less stress. I like it's incredible because I didn't even realize how in the medical stuff I had become until I like shed all of it. And now I'm like, oh, I actually sleep better. I wake up with energy. I like have way less stress in my life. I have the ability to do all these things, and cutting out the people who were also, you know, taking and taking from me. And
Mm.
yeah, it's been wild, but honestly, I wouldn't change it though.
It brought you on your path. It sounds like, for sure. I mean, what were the conversations? I mean, did you end up confronting your former therapist or this male doctor, this male nurse practitioner? No, he was a real doctor. It was
No,
a
he's a nurse practitioner.
no, sorry. So did you end up confronting the male practitioner, nurse practitioner?
My old therapist, I did not confront her. My new therapist, when I came out as detransitioning, she actually was like elated. She was so happy for me, because she actually used to write the doctor's notes for top surgery, and and she couldn't do it anymore. She literally quit working for Open Door. She quit doing that line of work because it was killing her too. She was like, I cannot do this anymore in good conscience. And so she stopped. So when I told her, she was like, "Oh my God, there's someone else out there who doesn't agree with this." And she like cried for me and with me when I came out. It was, well, when I came out as a woman, she was so happy for me. And like, so we bonded over that, like, dropping of this trans stuff.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a whole story in and of itself. I mean,
Yeah.
she wrote tons of doctor's notes. I mean, I imagine she also must have panicked about the malpractice, like as the waves, you know, as the kind of the culture is shifting. I think, you know, all the malpractice cases and the gender, you know, all of Alex Aaron, the gender mappers, you know, maps of all the clinics going viral, all the pediatric gender clinics. I mean, I wonder if there was I mean, it sounds like she was obviously sincerely happy for you, but like she let it go on. Like it was like only until you
Yeah.
were like, "Oh, I'm a woman," that she's like, "Oh, thank God." You know, it's like, what? Like this ultimately, yeah. I mean, I'm just like, oh, this is where therapy is at?
Yeah, well, she had stopped doing the notes for the surgery. I think she only did it for like maybe a year or two. And
Okay.
then I think because it steadily increased and she had to write more and more, and she was just like, this is not right. She
Yeah, she
she
stopped.
she told me, she
Yeah.
was like, I would go into these sessions and feel sick, like physically ill.
Good.
She's like,
That's
I
a
could
healthy
not do it
response
in.
to writing a doctor's notes for a double mastectomy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, like, and she kind of like quietly told me about that when I was still identifying as non-binary and all of this. Like, she was worried that I was going to ask her for one of these notes. And then when I came out that I didn't have to, she was just like, "Oh my God, there's another person in this community who doesn't want to do this." Like,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
And have you kept in touch? Is she someone you've kept in touch with or you feel like is an
Oh,
ally
she's still
now?
my therapist.
Oh,
She's
she's still your
amazing.
therapist.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Really, really interesting. Wow.
Well, she does like embodiment work and like all
Uh-huh.
of the like,
Hmm.
it's she saved my life too.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Oh, well, is there anything else we didn't get to that you feel like is important to voice to people listening?
I guess the main things that I say to everybody in real life as well are to remember that science is real. Science and physiology and biology are real. They are factual. They're immutable. They're not fantasy. They're not something we can rewrite or recreate. These are things that this earth has created. You know, everything down to our DNA. We cannot change that. Sure, we can modify it, we can make the body look different, but at the end of the day, your physiology and your biology matters for your health.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're healthy, and you're embodied and you're aware, this stuff shouldn't matter. Ideology shouldn't matter when it comes to your health. Get informed, think about what you're doing, listen to your body, listen to actual science, because that's where reality is. Not in blind affirmation, not in online chat rooms, not in communities and spaces where everybody's all saying the same thing, whether it's to your face or online. It's just get real.
Okay. Well, what do you think is next? I mean, what, you mentioned how much is, how much has opened up for you, less stress, just like life being like better. Do you have hopes and dreams for like activism or playing more of a role in this sphere, or are you more just ready to like live a simple, uncomplicated life, just in peace and harmony with nature?
I definitely am just more on the path of helping my community that I live in. It's a small area. I work for the county itself, so I'm here helping the most vulnerable people in our community, homeless people mostly. And I'm really focused on that right now, and that takes up a lot of my time and energy. I'm still focusing on my own journey, and yeah, ideally just trying to live a life outside of the ideology, outside of the cult, and just focus on the world, the real world around me that I live in and breathe in and walk in and all that stuff every single day, because that's truly what matters, are the people around me and the people that I help in my community. Humboldt County is one of the most beautiful places in the Pacific Northwest. So yeah, being one with nature out here is definitely a plus, and definitely what I spend a lot of my time doing.
Amazing. Well, your community's lucky to have you. And yeah, just thank you so much for reaching out and for vulnerably telling, your story. And I can't wait to, see what's next for you. This next chapter will look like.
Thank you. It's been great.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or family member who needs to hear this content. And if you do share it on social media, don't forget to follow and tag me at @whose body is it. So until next time.